Okay, I now call the Economic Development Commission meeting to order on Wednesday, August the 19th.
That's great. And the first item on our agenda is the roll call and then the approval of 2 sets of minutes.
Okay, give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so do you have an agenda there that I'm looking at?
I can share.
I don't know if I missed an email or what's happened here, so I apologize.
Well, I emailed you late to give you a heads up, and
I don't remember seeing it. I don't know if occasionally the emails for this commission goes to an email that I no longer use.
Oh,
so that
okay.
might have happened because I haven't seen anything. I got Jeff's message and then I hopped on the call.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll connect with you about that.
Okay.
After the meeting. I apologize for that. Okay,
No
so
problem.
I'm screen sharing the agenda.
Thank you.
And then we were called to order. And then are you comfortable? If you haven't reviewed the minutes, it seems like maybe we should just postpone the July 15th and 21st minutes to the September meeting.
Okay, I was going to go ahead and do roll call if that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Jeff McKim?
Here.
I assume Kurt's not here since I'm leading. And let's see here.
Vanessa, if it's easier, you can actually just have everybody else call themselves. I think Kate's here is the other member that's present.
Right. Yep, that's fine.
Okay, Kate Rosenbarger.
And then Vanessa. I know that seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. Vanessa McClary, I'm here. Yes.
Right,
Absolutely.
staff
Got it.
Jane Cooper Smith, staff.
Alex Crowley, staff.
Kaisa Good.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Kaisa.
Okay, is that everyone for roll call? Okay, moving on to the minutes. And yes, I think it's a great idea if we would just table the minutes. We can vote on them at the next meeting.
Would someone like to make a motion to formally consider the approval of the minutes for the next meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I think we have to do a
You have
roll
to do a
call
roll
vote,
call,
unfortunately.
exactly. So,
I'll do another roll call. Okay.
Commissioner McKim,
Yes.
Commissioner McClary,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenbarger.
Yes.
So moved. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we know where Kurt is today?
Conflict.
Attending a fancy meeting of the NCAA.
Okay. All right. All right, moving on. Do we have any old business? I see none on the agenda. Is that correct?
Well, you know, since I sent this out, Marnina brought up the point of that we had talked about moving the meetings to the second Wednesday of the month. And this is not the second Wednesday. So I didn't know if we needed to formally approve that as a group. And then Larry, if we can go ahead and, is it okay for us to just put that in motion on our staff side?
Yeah, why don't we do that on a staff level and coordinate that with all the commissioners, and then we'll just notice it as appropriate. And we can formalize that at the next meeting when everybody's present.
Okay. So the next meeting should stay on the third Wednesday, and then after that, or should the next meeting be on the second Wednesday?
We'll take a little poll of the commissioners and make sure they're available the second Wednesday, and we can notice it and have a meeting then. And then we can formalize that going forward for all meetings, but there's nothing that prohibits us from scheduling a meeting early.
Oh, okay.
So did we say that we want to poll the commissioners on the call? Is that what we're doing?
We'll do it all together so that everybody has a say so for their commission, not in this meeting, but
Okay,
we'll just send out a poll for y'all to respond to.
sounds great.
Thank
So
you.
we're keeping, sorry, are we keeping the next one on the 16th for now? Or are we polling between now and then?
It's, we'll poll between now and then, so that may
Okay.
move. But depending
Okay.
on everyone's availability.
I'm just going to put it on both days for now.
Okay, thank you. So we're moving on. Any other old business? Okay, moving to new business. It looks like we have Jennifer Pearl with us, and we're gonna have EDA grant proposal from CEDS equivalent.
And Vanessa, just I was giving a summary of the background, which I can give you separately. So
Okay,
have a little bit more context. The short of it is what Jen is going to talk about is within the context of an economic development administration grant. And I'll talk to you separately about the background.
okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's really good to see everyone here today. Just very, very briefly, I represent the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, and we're a nonprofit that serves all of Monroe County in the creation and attraction of quality jobs. And the BEDC is working with the city of Bloomington to apply for US EDA CARES Act funding to establish a Trades District Technology Center, as Alex had mentioned. And really briefly, just for Vanessa, it'll really do two things. One is providing programming and services to help commercialize technology and accelerate the growth of our over 50 local tech companies while growing local tech employment. So doing all that through programming and services, and then also creating a physical hub for tech companies and tech commercialization in the Bloomington Trades District.
Mhm.
And the EDA, the Economic Development Administration and the federal government generally expects to fund at least 80% of eligible project costs. So that could translate to several $1 million for the community. It's a pretty hefty application. So we've been working on this for a number of months and hope to get it in by September 30th. Pieces of that include architecture and engineering. The city has put out an RFQ for the building, environmental consulting, a feasibility study, and a comprehensive economic development strategy equivalent. And we just call that CEDS for short. So the item that we wanted to touch on today is what the CEDS is, CEDS equivalent, and sort of how we hope to be connecting with entities across the community in that process. The CEDS is something that's created by the US Economic Development Administration, and it looks at really pulling a broad array of stakeholders together in a community to focus on essentially an economic development strategy for that community. The reason we say CEDS equivalent is because CEDS is typically multiple counties. And because this is, at below the county level, it would essentially be an equivalent of that. What it really does is outlines our community's strategy moving forward. And for the purposes of this application, it talks about how this proposed technology center will fit within that broader strategy. So that's kind of the broad brushstrokes. This is the strategy, and then other pieces of the application, such as the feasibility study, actually establishes the market demand for the services and for the building that we're proposing here. They really want to make sure that a community is all on board with the strategy and wants to make sure that you've really verified what you're proposing to do in the community, and that there's a true need for it. So they're not just, willy-nilly giving out lots of money to local communities. So we're currently working through that process. And just a quick overview of what a CEDS equivalent would include. One is a summary background of the economic conditions of our region. So talking about how we've been impacted by the pandemic, how we anticipate that this project will help to get us through it. And we'll be able to pull from a lot of existing studies out there, including the Battelle study from the Regional Opportunities Initiative, which talks about cluster development in our region and opportunities for employment growth. We have data from various consultants. There's things like the Mayor's Wage Growth Task Force report and other occupational needs assessments. A second area is a SWOT analysis on our local community and ways that we might be able to address some of those threats and challenges. Third is a strategic direction and action plan that talks about how we as a community intend to move forward to pursue achieving our economic development goals of the community. Fourth is an evaluation framework, how we'll evaluate this over time. And then fifth is economic resilience. So that is essentially a community's ability to withstand a natural or human-made disaster. And I think the pandemic is certainly a part of that, because they want to make sure that everyone is working together and be able to get through it. So what we will be doing in the coming weeks is pulling from existing plans to build out what the SEDS equivalent will look like, and we'll be also consulting with partners around the community to get their buy-in on it. And then we'll also look for essentially the blessing of those partners moving forward. Alex also made a reference to a broader SEDS plan that we're hoping to embark on a little bit later in the fall. It was supposed to happen earlier this year, but then a pandemic happened. So the goal there is essentially to be coordinating across partners and across all the initiatives that we have in our community related to economic development, to say, here are what our priorities are. And we know what many of those are already, in terms of employment growth, in terms of needs for housing, in terms of needs for quality of life. And by being able to better articulate those, working across partners to say, hey, this is how we could all row in the same direction, we can make sure all of these different initiatives in the community can build on top of one another and sort of be moving the ball in that direction going forward. I will pause there and see if anyone has any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Still processing.
And also, if you have questions about the concept itself of the Technology Center, I'm happy to touch on aspects of that as well.
Do you have any examples of SEDS or SEDS equivalents that we can possibly take a look at? I mean, not the second, but that we could see the kind of format that report would look like, and what kind of information would be included?
Yeah, there's I don't have it in hand at the moment, but one of the consultants that we were talking to about this mentioned how Indianapolis had put together a SEDS equivalent for some of the federal funding that they've received. And so I was going to reach out to some colleagues up there to see if they can share.
That would be great. Thanks. And would the scope be, so I mean, I know you mentioned the region as the context, but would the scope specifically be the city of Bloomington? Would it be Monroe County? Would it be something larger? What?
Yeah, so that's something that we're confirming with the EDA in the coming week or so, just to see, because they use region in a very fluid way sometimes. And so certainly the city of Bloomington in this regard, and then we'll see if we need to pull anybody in outside of that, if they'll require that for this SEDS equivalent. It is a really fascinating opportunity here, and this is what what Alex had commented on. This would be a really exciting, essentially, opportunity for the community, because we have such incredible assets coming out of the university when it comes to tech. they have some really niche areas of specialty related to AI, machine learning, big data, bioinformatics, cybersecurity, et cetera. So we've been, exploring with IU ways in which this might intersect with them. And we've also been talking to partners around the Crane area and as well as, contractors that work with Crane to talk about, this intersection between commercialization and technology and how we can use that to grow jobs for our region. And then we've also been consulting with other tech companies locally to find out, what would be most useful for you in a center like this. So just very briefly, it boils down to connections to, companies that could help, buy their technology, connections to peer groups and funding, opportunities to attract and grow talent. Many times folks in our market don't realize that you can work in tech somewhere other than the university or IU Health, that we actually have a base that people can go to. Providing advisory services as these companies are growing, connecting the companies, as I mentioned, to funding, connecting them to federal information and partnerships, knowing there are federal opportunities out there, as well as other resources.
And would there be, I don't know, some particular effort made to, to engage with people of color, with women entrepreneurs, with people who aren't necessarily represented as highly in the tech world?
I certainly would think so, especially because we're trying to grow employment opportunities across the board. But in that regard, we are very much welcome, if anyone listening here has ideas or suggestions or ways that this might connect with existing initiatives, or where we might currently have gaps in the marketplace that we can try to address with this, we'd love to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, I would love to hear more about that. If what kinds of initiatives might be possible.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that it is having all of this information presented in kind of one lump. It really is a lot to take in. This is an enormous project. And I think with ESD and BEDC working together in partnership, we've been trying to wrap our brains around it in a pretty dedicated fashion since early June. And it's really started taking form over the course of July in a more concrete way. And so it may take a couple times. Everyone will have to become pretty well versed in it in order to be able to offer valuable input and comfortably weigh in on it. I think there's a lot there.
I will also put my email in the chat. And so if anybody has additional questions or would like to reach out, we'd be delighted to talk.
And then, so just to circle back around, you'd basically at some point like this body's endorsement of or official adoption of the SEDS equivalent. Is that the goal here?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things, Jeff, that needs to be done is that we want to make sure we have the right bodies endorsing it on its way out the door. That helps not only to make sure that we fulfill the requirement of the application itself, but also it sort of lends a holistic kind of more expansive general endorsement of the process that we're pursuing. The EDC, the Redevelopment Commission, ROI, and most likely, and the mayor's office. I think those will become signatories to the document as part of the preparation for the agenda, for the application.
Great.
So do we have a timeline?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered if we had a timeline that you were saying you were wanting it endorsed by these different entities. Do we have a timeline we're working under?
We are aiming to submit by the end of September, the whole application. And so it's many parts of that. The next meeting I know that we were just talking about might be by either the second or the third week of September. And although I will say the third week of September will give us an extra week to work on this. So we are moving really quickly, and so we'd probably be looking for approval around then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we
I
have
was
any
just
other
going to say,
questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh
No, go
yeah,
ahead. I was just asking.
I feel like I don't have any deep questions right now, honestly, because I'm just learning about it. I mean, it sounds like a very intense application, like you said. And I mean, so you have to even talk about this building, like you said, did you say architecture? Like you have to say, like, this is where it's going to be built. This is what it's going to look like. I mean, all of that has to get done. Okay.
Yeah, so we have an RFQ that's in the marketplace that went out, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. It's due at the end of the month, and it's for architecture and engineering services. And so what we are doing in the near term is what we have to submit with the grant is preliminary concepts, designs far enough along so that they can start to cost out what that would look like, because really what the application is looking for is not really design as much as a pretty good estimate of what the costs will be for the building itself. So we have to do that first part to get to the second part. We don't actually have to finalize that design, and it's a preliminary set of cost estimates, but it will determine what the grant award would be if we were to win the award. So we have to be pretty accurate, or reasonably accurate. So yes, the short answer is we have gone into market. We've asked them to come back to us by I think it's the 24th of August. We're going to pick someone really fast, and then we're going to that work. And they really only have until probably the 18th of September to get that preliminary estimating and designing done, because we need to package it together and get it into the application and out the door by the end of the month. So it's a pretty heavy lift, but we're moving fast. We've got a really good, Kaizo's running the project plan on it, and we've got a very solid and detailed project plan. So we're staying on top of things. If it doesn't go out exactly on the 30th, it's not the end of the world. There's no a hard deadline, but we're very conscious of the fact that people are going to be competing pretty aggressively for this money, and so the sooner we can get it in, the better.
And you've already run this, but I know you had a presentation to the RDC a few weeks ago, and they gave the preliminary approval, but not specific funding allocation.
Yeah, we went to them. What they have is a process that is called a project review form, and the project review form is they're not committing to the funding. What they're doing is they're accepting a first view of what that funding might look like, and then as new funding comes along, that then we harden that particular line item and present them with an actual agreement or whatever it is that's required for that particular line of funding. So they are aware of this, and presented the same overview of the project and SEDS to them, and so they're on board. Ultimately, the local funding would come from TIF, so they would have to be, and it's RDC land, and it would become an RDC property retained by the RDC. So they're going to be heavily involved in this process as it goes forward.
And what lot were you planning on using for the building? I know I've heard this at one point.
Well, we've proposed 2, but we haven't mandated them. The reason we kind of shrunk the options really was for practical purposes, like if they need to be doing, if we have to go do like preliminary engineering work or environmental work or whatever. We want to make sure that we're staying within certain boundaries. And so the 2 that we put on the table as potentials that again, a design team can come back and say, actually, we think it should be over there, are what we call lot 2A and 2B. And those are directly across the street from to the west of the kiln and mill. So just north of the trees. So that combination of lots is one that we put on the table. And the other combination of lots was the lot that Tassos originally was going to consume, which is what we call 2A and 2B, and that's to the south of Maker Way and to the just due west of Madison. So the southeasternmost lot.
Just kind of an empty field right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And the feasibility study that we mentioned, which will be running in parallel to this, we'll be able to, as we're sussing out with local tech companies and others, where they'll say, okay, here's what we think would be most useful to us. Here's what wouldn't be, making sure that the design of the building most closely meets the needs of growing companies.
Any
So-
additional comments or questions?
I have none.
Okay, anyone else?
No, thank you to Jen for sharing that with us. And this is more of a heads up, but but a heads up that more is coming, and so there'll be a little bit more substance next time we come.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Jen.
That's fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so looking at the agenda, it looks like we're just asking if there's anything else for the good of the order. Seeing none. Our next meeting is right now scheduled for September 16th, unless something changes between now and then at 4:15. And I guess we're ready for adjournment if there's nothing else.
If we adjourn.
Do we need a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We stand adjourned. All right. Thanks, everyone.